Rhythm is the heartbeat of jazz, and the heartbeat of the jazz group is the drum. Now, one of the things that the drum does is to play rhythms such as the ones that the one that I was just doing, which was kind of a Cuban rhythm. But there's a different way to play that rhythm. When Steve John plays that kind of rhythm a little faster, sometimes it sounds like this. Now, that's a kind of a straight ahead rhythm, but when he plays the Latin rhythm, and he does that a little faster than what we were just doing a moment ago in the Cuban style, it sounds like this. Okay, now that's two different rhythms that we use in jazz. There are many more. Just in the Latin tinge area that we were talking about, here's another. This is kind of a calypso rhythm. Now, you can hear the difference there, but listen to the difference in this. The conga, I should say the kind of Brazilian rhythm that we know as conga, actually evolved into something that we now know as the bossa nova. And when we use that in jazz, it sounds like this sometimes. So you see, we have a lot to work with when we're improvising, and we can take different rhythms and convey different kinds of feelings. Now, the drum is a wonderful instrument to do that because in the hands of a wonderful musician like Steve, what one hears is the different sounds. When we were here last time, we had him demonstrate the fact that he does 4 different things. One rhythm with his right foot, one with his left foot, another rhythm with his right hand, another with his left. And he also gets different tone qualities from the various cymbals and drums that he uses. One person is doing all this. I'm going to show you how he does it. To go back to that first rhythm that he played for you, we're going to get him to start us off on a tune from the jazz repertoire, one that is called Cute. It was written by Neil Hefti for the Count Basie Band, but we're going to give you a trio version of Cute. Steve Johns. Steve Johns. And his version of Cute, written by Neal Hefti. And that's one of the pieces. Remember, I told you jazz was a way of playing. It's also a group of pieces that kind of defines that way of playing. Songs like that one written by Neal Hefti give us a chance to do special things with the jazz styles that we like to play. We take the bass violin, for instance. And the bass violin, you normally hear on the things that we've been playing so far, you hear him playing different kinds of rhythms on the bass. Now, he plays them primarily by playing pizzicato and walking the bass like this. Now, you are perhaps a little more familiar with some of the rhythms that are played on the bass guitar. He plays those on the bass violin also, but they sound like this sometimes. So you can see he does a lot of very rhythmic things on the bass violin, as well as melody. Now, you don't normally think of the bass as playing melodies, but we recorded a melody not long ago called Back Home. It's a blues. We were talking about the blues, and this is a little blues melody that I'd like for him to just play the way he plays it on the bass. Now, that's just the way he would play that particular piece. But you can take the blues feeling and do other things with it. Now, what every jazz musician does is compose music. So every jazz musician is a composer. Chip Jackson is a composer. He wrote a tune with which he asked the question, is there Jackson in the house? And it uses many blues elements, but it also uses many other things. This is Chip Jackson's version of his own tune, Is There Jackson in the House? Chip Jackson. So you see, there are many styles of jazz, as we're trying to show you. There are some that use elements of the music that you're very familiar, and some that use elements that you maybe are not as familiar as perhaps you should be. When I play the piano, I like to do things that reflect both the jazz tradition and the European classical tradition that I studied. I'll show you how I put those things together sometime. For instance, just to give you an idea of some of the things that happen in jazz, there's a style of jazz that has a kind of a ragtime accompaniment. Now, that kind of, that's called stride piano, and it's the accompaniment to an older style, one of the first styles of jazz. As a matter of fact, the very first style of jazz. You may be more familiar with that accompaniment when you hear it like this. So, you know, when I play the entertainer, that's what I was using. Now, when I do other things, for instance, there's another kind of accompaniment that was used back in the days when Teddy Wilson was playing with the Benny Goodman Quartet, and they were playing really fast jazz. They used to play things like this. Now, so the left hand was just running all over the place. Like that. And so that was one kind of accompaniment. When I play jazz, sometimes I use one, sometimes I use another, but sometimes I use something that kind of goes really back to studying piano when I had to learn things. Things like that. Well, what do you do with that if you're going to be a jazz musician? Sometimes you do something like this. Thank you very much. Thank you. So you see what I did. I hope you recognize the melody that I finally came back to in the end. One of the pieces that we like to play is Jerome Kern's All the Things You Are, and that was my version of it. And you heard me doing some of the things with the left hand that I like to do, using jazz language, using the jazz language, but putting it into a context that one normally associates with Johann Sebastian Bach or other classical composers, because the things that I learned from them were very important to me as a musician, because you have to learn to play the instrument in order to say what you want to say to an audience such as you. Now, you are a wonderful audience, but we have an audience on the phone. And one of the numbers that's been flashing on the screen for those who are looking at TV is 1-800-578-1396. And do we have a call yet? We don't have a call yet? We don't have a call yet. All right. Well, one of the things that I'd like to open the floor for, we always like to talk to the audience. Now, you're a bunch of bright students, most of whom are musicians. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask either Steve Johns on drums or Chip Jackson on bass or me? Is there anything you always wanted to know about jazz or any kind of music in the popular area? Any questions? No questions? Over there, yeah, okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Joey Labrie, and my question is for you and your two fellow musicians. Did you all start playing jazz in high school, and if so, who inspired you?
Well, I started playing jazz in high school, and I was inspired by several pianists, Art Tatum, Fats Waller, Duke Ellington, and Teddy Wilson, who I mentioned earlier. And I wanted to play this instrument because I had played in the high school band, played saxophone, and I found out there were a lot of better players in the wind instruments than I was, so I went back to the piano. So I really like the things that I can do on that instrument. But how about you, Steve? When did you start?
I started in actually junior high school, actually elementary school. Yeah, way back then. And I didn't get serious about it until I got into actually drum and bugle corps, which maybe some of you are involved in that. Is anybody involved in drum and bugle corps at all?
No drum and
marching
bugle.
band?
No
Don't have
marching
anything.
band. Marching band. Oh,
marching band.
There you go.
All right.
All right. Okay.
Okay, that's good. Sure. But I was involved in drum bugle corps, which is a very, in a way, kind of very disciplined military, kind of way of playing. And we used to go to competitions, and they had drum judges. I'm sure they did that with marching bands too. But I learned a lot about rudiments in that, and then I left that and got involved. I saw a drummer who I love still to this day, Alan Dawson. And I still call him now to ask him questions, and he was a big influence to me, and he's up in Boston, and I learned a lot from him.
From your teacher?
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Chip?
I started playing piano when I was about 5 or 6, and my teacher was about 100 years old, so my lessons only lasted about a year, and then I got a new teacher that wasn't happening at all, so I gave up playing until I heard Louis Armstrong. And the bass player made a big impression on me, so I started playing bass when I was 13. And as it turned out, the teacher in my junior high school, who taught all the instruments, his favorite was bass. So he took a liking to me. So I was lucky. He inspired me. So I can say that the public school system inspired me to become a professional musician.
Great. All right. Yes.
Hi, my name is Mike Gardner. I have a question for you, Mr. Taylor. How do you determine the chord progressions that you're going to make, that you make?
Well, determining chord progressions is one that it's a lifetime study for me. Many of the musicians that I admired, like Duke Ellington, like Art Tatum, were people who were harmonically oriented. But I worked with Charlie Parker and I worked with John Coltrane, and they had a different approach to harmony. Each of those people explored the upper partials of the chord. So instead of just playing a regular, they would play and go up further, and you'd hear the whole chord. And they would do a different kind of improvisation. But based on Art Tatum's ideas, I began to hear other things in the music like this. Now, what I do is to take something like that and expand the chords. Those are the chords that Johnny Green wrote, but I might just start at a totally different place. I might say, so I can start in a different place and I can go, I can end up in the right place by just saying I'm going from this point to that point. The idea is logic, so that the chords move in a logical way. They may move chromatically, or they may move diatonically, or they may move in larger combinations, like the cycle of the fourth. But knowing that about harmony helps me to bring in new harmonic structures so that it gives a little more variety to the pieces that I play. Yes. Oh, just before we get to you, we have a call from Amelia, Virginia.
Yes, my name is Tanya Booker, and I'm a 20-year-old sophomore at VCU, and I wanted to know, I like jazz a lot, and I have a tendency to prefer jazz over any other type of music. And when someone is buying a present or jazz for me, they really don't know what to buy because I have a hard time describing what I like. So I try to sum it up and say I like the kind of sound that some of the older jazz musicians play, like Charlie Parker or Thelonious Monk, and even some of the newer jazz artists like Eric Reed. But I don't really know how to describe that besides of what a lot of people think that today, well, some of the jazz that comes out today. So I was wanting to know what kind of word, or is there a word or a category you would describe that kind of jazz music?
There are several ways you can describe jazz. The earlier musicians you spoke of play bebop. Some of the Eric Reed and some of the more contemporary musicians play the contemporary version of music that's based on the harmonic, rhythmic, and melodic structures that were invented by Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and others. So the best way to have people give you a present is to have them give you some CDs, and you name the people whose work you admire, and until you get to a better place, then you have to describe it as certain musicians play in a bebop style, a cool style, or a free style. There are many names for the categories, but you have to decide which of those categories you prefer. We have a young man in a white sweatshirt there. Yeah, nice one too.
Well, I'm a piano player myself, and I wanted to know how would a musician like myself become a jazzy piano player like you?
Practice.
I'm talking about, like...
one of the things that you need to do is to learn the repertoire. In the same way that you study European classical music, you can study jazz. I mean, if you're going to say, I want to be a concert pianist, I want to play in concerts at the Kennedy Center and places like that, you would study Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, and Chopin, and the traditional European composers that typify various aspects of the styles that you would concertize, that you would use to concertize it. The same thing is true of jazz. You have to study the masters of the music, the Duke Ellingtons, the Charlie Parkers. If you're a pianist, you need to look at what Art Tatum did. You need to look at what Bill Evans did, what Oscar Peterson did. And there are many recordings that will help you say, well, that's a direction that I would like to go when I play, when I do my improvisations. So you have to work on that. You should study with a teacher because it'll save you a lot of time. He can tell you what to study, what to practice, and really move you from one place to another. So there's a lot of books that describe how to think in the jazz style, how to do different things, and you need to just kind of look at that. We have a call from Washington, D.C. we're going to take.
Hi. I'm primarily an electric guitarist, and although I don't play straight-ahead jazz, it's one of my biggest influences musically. And I appreciate the work that you do to teach it because I've learned a lot from seeing you on different programs, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure. A lot of times I just see you talking, so it was a pleasure to hear you play a lot more. And I want to commend all your musicians. They all are excellent. But one of the things I just wanted to ask about today was if your drummer could maybe talk about different time signatures and how to determine those, because I'm always kind of confused about determining those and what make those up, and so talk about time signatures or polyrhythms and that type of thing. Thank you.
We'll talk about time signatures first, then talk about polyrhythms.
Time signatures. Okay. Well, of course, the first time signature is 4/4 time, and from there you can break that down into different things. You can break it down into 6 beats, which can be you can think of that as 6/4, because you could just take quarter note triplets, 2 settings of those, which would sound like you got a quarter note here, like this. It's a quarter note. And what you would do polyrhythms like this. This is a 6/4. So a lot of times when I'm playing, I can think like, so that's just one way of approaching it. That's one way. And then you have just your basic, you can go to 3/4 from there, which is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then you can apply 4 over that, which would be like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So that's what they call, these things are those are polyrhythms, because I'm playing another time signature over another time signature. You can play 3 against 4, you can play 4 against 6. And then you got like 5/4. All right, 5/4, which is like, you've heard Dave Brubeck's Take 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can even do funk or a rock feel over that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. So that's pretty much the beginning of doing it. So I hope that helped you.
One thing that amuses me is the fact that on TV now, on a commercial, you hear this sound. Which is the rhythm that Dave Brubeck and Steve was just talking about, the rhythm that Dave Brubeck uses in Paul Desmond's Take 5. And it's so easy to hear, even, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but people can count that, they feel it. Yes, sir.
Okay. My question was for Mr. Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know what scales or studies could you use for, or tell me, for a young musician?
What's the question again?
All right. What scales or studies would you recommend for a young jazz bassist for his playing?
Scales or studies. Ray Brown has a great book. You know who Ray Brown is?
No.
Well, there's a few heavies that you should acquaint yourself with that progressed the history of jazz bass. Ray Brown is one. Jimmy Blanton was the first one to start playing solos on the bass. Before him, people just played rhythms. But Ray Brown really took it into a step. He's got a great book, Bass Method. Rufus Reid has a tremendous book, 2 books. One is called The Evolving Bassist, and the other one's called Evolving Upward. Those are the 2 that I would recommend, the books that I would recommend. And they outline it right for you, right there. What scales to practice, all the major, minor, diminished, augmented. Basically, as a jazz bass player nowadays, you got to really play more than the bottom of the chord. In the old days, you could just get away with playing roots and fifths. You could make a whole career out of that. But nowadays, you really have to know all the chords that the piano player and the guitar player are playing. And you learn your chords, and you can get going.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to ask the entire audience to do something a little different. We've been talking primarily about rhythm and how Steve demonstrated how you can use polyrhythms. You can use one rhythm over another. Now, I talked to you before we went on the air, and I'm going to get you to, as I said, I divided the audience from here is my first group, from here to my left. From here to my right is my second group, and in that group over there on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the aisle, is my third group. Now, what I want you to do is to join me in sort of doing the rhythmic kind of thing. Now, I want the first group to clap a rhythm which starts on 1, and that rhythm you play 1 and 3. You pat your foot on 1 and 3, clap your hands on 2 and 4, like this. Good. All right. Now this group, you're going to start on 2, and you're going to do that clave rhythm that Steve was doing a little while ago. 1. Good. Good. Now this group, you're going to start on 4, and you're going to do that kind of rhythm that one normally associates with the conga drum. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep going. Keep going. I can tell that you are musicians. Otherwise, you would have really gotten confused. Everybody was doing exactly what they were. I'm going to give you a hand. You were doing exactly what you were supposed to do. This group kept its rhythm. You held the time. You know, one of the things that happens a lot of times when you're working with young people, the time gets faster. And so instead of playing at the tempo you start, it gets faster and faster and faster. You didn't do that. You did very well. And I really appreciate that. You know, I'd like to really leave you with a couple of thoughts. The first is that jazz is America's classical music. It takes all of the elements that are a part of our tradition and puts them into a musical context. So when you play jazz, you can express Americana. You can express who we are and what we're about. Now that's obvious when you look at people who come from other places, and they don't have the personal freedom that we have. So they can't express themselves in their music in the way that you can in our music. And so if each one of you were to come up by him or herself and play on the stage, and you were playing jazz, everyone who came up would be playing a little differently from the other. It's like your handwriting or the sound of your voice. You're expected to do something which reflects you. And that's the beauty of the music. So I hope you'll think very clearly about the kind of things that you do when you learn to play music. When you study and you work with your teachers. We looked in on a drum class earlier, and they were learning some rudiments. Well, you know, after they learn those rudiments really well, they were in the other room over here. When they learn them real well, they can do what Steve was doing, because that's how he started. Now, we're going to leave you at this point. We always seem to run out of time just when we have a lot more to say. But I'd like to thank, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to perform for you, and I hope we get to do it again. I'd also like to thank the Kennedy Center for helping us, for bringing us to you. And also Prince William County Public Schools and the students in the audience and in the classroom. So I'd like to thank all of you who are lucky enough to go here to the Hilton School, and those of you who are just visiting, because we'd like to have you join us on December 12th for the next program, which features Pat Metheny. Now, that's going to be a pretty wonderful show, because Metheny, as you know, is one of our great guitarists. He does some things which are really unique. He epitomizes just what I'm talking about. As far as jazz musicians are concerned, he has his own personal style. So I hope we get to talk to you, to play for you, and we invite you all to come over to the Kennedy Center and check out some of the things that we're doing there. And we're going out, as we always try to do, with a little music. So thank you very much.